Hey guys, Joe Baker here with the Edit Bay. This is shaping up to be a really good year for third-party plugins. So as you probably heard by now, Red Giant just updated their Magic Bullet suite. Looks, Mojo, and Colorista all got updated. Now, they did something really interesting with Looks. I'm going to go ahead and show you that. In the previous version of Looks, you actually had certain tools, such as Cosmo, that were built into Looks. So although you could buy Cosmo as a standalone third-party plugin, it was also built into Looks. Now, they've done the same thing with Colorista and with Mojo, which is really cool, because for the upgrade fee, you're really getting all of these plugins all at once. So I have a quick clip here that we're going to go ahead and treat with some of the newest additions they've added to Looks. Now I'll briefly go into some of the presets. I'm going to go ahead and mention that the presets over here have all been designed by Stu Mashowitz, who is a genius and he's a professional colorist. So based off of user feedback, he went one by one, created every one of these different looks, one of these presets that are all customizable. And these are a great learning tool. In fact, this is really how I learned color correction. Years ago, one of the guys at Red Giant was saying that interesting way to use this tool is to go ahead and apply a preset to it and just look at these individual tools that make up that preset. Turn them on and off, see what they do, kind of see which one's doing the majority of the work, and you can kind of figure out how things are done. But let's just go ahead and talk about the individual tools, because if you're a longtime user of this product, you already know how to use the presets and they're pretty self-explanatory. I will add this though, with more people shooting in log and in flat picture profile, you'll see that we actually have some categories that are geared towards that. Log color film stock, log grading, log mono film stock, useful tools. So let's take a look at some of the new tools we have over here. Going over to our subject category, Colorista, I'm going to go ahead and add an instance of that. The 4-way color corrector, I'll add an instance of that. Shadow highlight, and somewhere, I believe it's over here, we've got Mojo. I'm going to go ahead and toggle a couple of these off for the time being just to kind of show you what we've got here. So let's take a look at Colorista. We've got a 3-way color corrector, an HSL adjustment, and curves. All three of these tools we've had in Looks for quite a while right now, but now all three of these are built into a single tool, just like in Colorista. In fact, aside from the keyer, this is Colorista, which is right here in Looks, really convenient. The 4-way color corrector will give us, go ahead and shut this off. Still gives you your shadows, midtones, and highlights with a master control. And then we've also got this graphical interface right down here to help us isolate certain parts of the image, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. But let's get started with Colorista. I'm going to go ahead and turn this back on. So I'm just going to do a basic, simple grade to this. I'm going to cool off the shadows a little bit. Kind of bias towards green a little bit since we've got a lot of green down there on the hills. Warm up the midtones just a bit. If you can take a look at the RGB parade over here, the shadows should be dropped a little bit too. Bring down the luminance, kind of boost the contrast just a little bit. Boost those midtones a little bit. And we've got a basic, color correction right there. Now with the HSL, I'm going to go ahead and bring out some of this green in the bushes with the HSL. So I'm going to go over to the lightness and increase this green a little bit. By the way, whenever you're working with trees and bushes and that kind of thing, you'll probably notice that when you work with an HSL tool, the green doesn't do nearly as much as the yellow does. And I'm just boosting the lightness of that yellow. Bring that out a little bit. And if I go a little bit crazy with that, that's okay. In fact, you know what? Let me go ahead and drop that just a hair. I'll try to make that just a little bit brighter. I'm going to go too crazy with it. And we'll see how we look with that. All right, so let's check out this 4-way color corrector and what it can do. Pretty similar to what I just had up on here, but what I really like is this graphical interface down here. If you remember the range saturation tool in previous versions of Looks, what it allowed you to do was control what part of the image is looked at as highlights, what part of the image is considered midtones, and what part of the image is considered shadows. And this is basically the same thing down here. We can slide this around by left click and dragging on it. What I want to do right now is this area of the valley right here, we can see these highlights down here, we can see these dark shadows, and I kind of want to increase the contrast in just that area and leave the hills alone for right now. So with this on, if I start sliding this around, I can get a matte. And what I'm doing right now with the matte is I'm trying to get that white blob to be over just that part of the valley. Because the second I do that, that means that's the part of the image that I'm going to be affecting. So a good mid-tone area right there. So now with the mid-tones, I'm just going to try to boost the contrast a little bit. Maybe move that a touch more towards warm. Yeah, toggle that on and off. All right. Moving on. Now, the shadows and highlights tool. This is really slick. Now, there were some ways around certain things before. If I go to the subject category, I had this grad exposure tool, which if I put this on here, let's say I wanted to boost the exposure in these areas in the foreground, I could flip that thing upside down, crank this up a couple stops, and I could get the image a little bit brighter at the bottom, which is great. Still works well. But this shadows highlight tool is really slick, where I can control these independently. Now you can see my sky is a tad on the blown out side, so I can reduce my highlights just a hair. Gonna look at the RGB parade over here. What I'm doing is I can lower that just below 1. Right about there. And the shadows I can boost up a little bit. Again, if you just kind of look at these hills and these plants over here, I'll toggle this on and off so you guys can see what that's doing. That's a really handy tool to have around. This can kind of help fix some of the things that you've done with tools previous to this one. You know, if you've crushed your shadows a little bit and blown out your highlights, this can bring things back down into a more manageable level. So let me show you something cool you can do with these clouds up here. So if we go over to our toolbox and scroll down and use this star filter, I'll go ahead and go with this preset here really quick. Select that, close this, come up here to our size and play around with the boost and everything a little bit. What we can actually do is fake some light rays coming out of the clouds. I know that looks kind of crazy at this point, but we're going to tone that down just a little bit. And as you can see right here, and we can kind of sell that idea because we've got the patches of shadows down here and some light spots. We just got to play with this. We don't want to overdo it too much, obviously. Let's get that to where it looks just barely noticeable. Again, if we ever, any of these tools, if you turn on the threshold, you'll see that nothing happens. And that's not until you actually start to slide things around to see. What I'm doing right now is I'm defining what area is considered bright. In other words, where exactly is looks going to have that look apply. In fact, I may shrink that just a little bit more. That way we can see if we can get that to be a little bit more of a subtle effect. Right about there. Just toggle it on and off to make sure you're making a subtle difference right there. And that's kind of just what I wanted to get, was just that little haze right about there. Okay, let's take a look at what Mojo can do. Go over here to our post section, double click Mojo. The Mojo comes on pretty thick, so right up here is the intensity, your overall intensity. I usually crank that down just a little bit. Now I am going to balance this a little bit more towards the warmer side. Maybe right about there. Punch it. Yeah, punch is just going to increase your contrast a little bit. Now here's what I like about having this in my tool chain. This is still a little bit strong, but we have an overall strength slider right here, which I'm going to reduce probably to about 50%. Again, this is with it off, and this is with bringing things up just a little bit. And I like that because what it's doing is it's, again, warming up this area. We've got some warmer highlights up here in the shadows, and this makes for a pretty nice composite. Now you can see the focal point of this particular image is this area of the frame right here. But let's say you wanted to lift some of the shadows in just this area over here on the bush. Back to our 4-way color corrector. If you make sure this is on, this dark area over here is your shadows. So if you just left click and drag and make sure that that matte is just covering that bush, which it is right here. Then go over here to your shadow slider and just, you can lift the luminance a little bit or drop the luminance. And we're really affecting more or less just that bush. So I actually do want that to be a little bit darker, so it's almost a subtle vignette. And again, because the focal point really is this area right here. The last thing I might do to this particular image, I would actually do back in Premiere or After Effects, which is just sharpen. And the reason I would do it in Premiere and After Effects is so that I could mask it off. I probably wouldn't want to sharpen or boost the contrast too much in my sky because I put these hotspots up here. But just to give you an idea of what it would look like with a little bit of pop, go ahead and throw that to the end of the tool chain. Usually 40 or 50% of pop will do it. So let's go ahead and raise that up. 50, let's see how we look right there. Toggle that on and off. Yeah, we're in pretty good shape with that. So not bad. I mean, quick example of what we can do with some of the newest tools in Magic Bullet looks. I mean, this could almost pass for Hawaii. You would never guess that this is the meth lab capital of the country. And now that we've done all of that hard work, I do want to point out a couple of the presets over here. And this is pretty exciting. You know, I've been doing video production for about between 10, 11 years, somewhere around in there. So film was before my time. I've always worked with digital media, so I really don't know much about working with actual film. And there's a ton of presets in here that were geared towards giving your footage a film look. And so, in fact, let me just go ahead and throw one of these. Let's try that one. Giving your footage more of a film look. And these were all, again, handcrafted by Stu Mashwitz, who knows what he's doing, who's worked with film before. And according to Red Giant's website, they put a ton of effort into emulating real film stock with this. And so if you take a look at this preset right down here, one of the things that he explained is that you've got your film negative, which is the medium to which you record your movie. Then you've got some color processing in post-production, followed by your film print, the film medium that you're going to print to. And so this is actually a good tool for me, again, coming from digital video. I can kind of learn the basic gist of how to work with film and how to create those more cinematic looks with these presets right here. Anyway, my name is Joe Baker with the Edit Bay. If you have any questions, please leave a comment in the box below. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.